Hey guys, how's it going? We're gonna talk about a project we're wrapping up here. This is a customer's 2003 first gen Tacoma, little pre-runner guy, two-wheel drive V6. We did a bunch of suspension work to it here at the shop, so we're just gonna go over some of the things that we did. In the front, the guy already had spindle gussets on there and Total Chaos's upper control arms. We finished it off with Total Chaos's coil bucket, tower, gusset kit, the lower eccentric cam kit, the Total Chaos lower control arms, as well as the uniball conversion for the lower ball joint, and heim steering. We did pair that with an ADS 2.5 coilover with clicker adjuster and an ADS 2 1/8 inch bump stop. For the coilover, we did end up doing some valving changes to get more out of this thing. We did also calculate new spring rates, and we dropped the spring rate from a 600 down to a 450. Made the suspension a little bit more compliant. We were able to do some cooler stuff with the valving since we were able to do that with this. For the bump stop, we tried to outboard the bump stop as far as possible to get farther down the lower control arm. That allows us to have the bump stop be a little bit more effective at the top range of the travel, and give us a little bit more of that ride zone before the bump stop starts coming into it. Along with that, we did shorten the bump stop to 1-inch travel, and where the bump stop ended up mounting, it was a little close to the edge of the control arm there, and I wanted to give it a little bit more of a strike pad. So I actually made an aluminum 1/2-inch thick strike pad that was able to mount to the arm. That gives us a nice surface area for the bump stop to land without messing up the arm in the long run. All right, moving on to the back. One of the cool things about this project is we want to keep it as sleeper status as possible, so it looks like a lot of other little Tacomas that are out there. It's only like 1.5 inches over stock, little 32-inch tires, but we wanted this thing to party, so we did go with a pretty large shock package on this thing. Normally when you go to a larger shock setup and you want a lot of wheel travel, you end up having to C-notch the frame on these and modify the inner fender wells or do some sort of bed cage, but we were able to get away with all that by doing something pretty cool. In the back, we finished this thing off with a nice little pre-runner bumper, something nice and tight and clean, but to give him enough protection that he needs, but keep it looking good. For the leaf spring setup under here, we ended up going with a spring under F55 Deaver setup. And then we also built some 12-inch long shackles for this thing that allowed us to get the shackle angle that we wanted to get the effective spring rate real light. That way we can control everything with the shock package. Now with the shock package that we went with a 3.0 14-inch travel ADS MBR internal bypass shock back here. And we actually built a cantilever system to go down to the axle. We did pair that with ADS's limit straps and their hydraulic bump stops. These are 2 1/8 by 2-inch travel, and we're able to get about 17 inches bumped and strapped with this thing without modifying the fenders and without having to modify the driveline or anything else. With the axle setup down here, this is a Trail Gear 8.4 fabricated housing, and then with that we cut the semi-float cups out of the factory housing and machined them to fit into this housing. We're able to retain the factory track width, and retain the ABS sensors, brakes, park brake assembly, and everything. So everything about the truck functions as, factory. One thing we did also modify was that load sensing proportion valve that's always on these trucks. We did remove that and add a Willwood manually adjusting proportioning valve. That's actually where the old proportioning valve used to be. It's easy to access, but tucked up way out of the way. That really opened up the brakes, and the brakes feel way more positive. You can kind of dial them in based on exactly what you're doing. With these shocks and everything, we were able to change the valving to get the ride zone super soft and plush for daily driving, but everything is very progressive, so this thing will really handle all the big bumps and crazy terrain that you can push this thing through. That's, I think, everything that kind of wraps it up. So I think this thing came out really cool. We're able to hide a really nice big shock package in there, but keep this thing looking as stock as possible. Very clean and simple, but this thing is ready to rock. Really excited to see what this customer is able to do with this thing and get out there. A closer look at the rear suspension on this guy. So we got our trail gear semi-float housing here, the 8.4 inch one for Toyotas, and then we have the semi-float cups keeping all the factory sensors and shafts and brakes and all that. We got our F55 Devers down here, the little spring under stuff with 12 inch shackles. We got our tubular cradle down here holding our cantilever set up. That's got our 14-inch travel 3.0 MVR internal bypass ADS shocks back here. We got our ADS limit straps tucked in there with our 2 1/8 inch by 2 inch travel ADS bump stops as well.